Says we're live. I think we're live.
Are we? Okay, wonderful. I don't see, I've got the chat turned on. Okay, hello, everybody. This is Dr. Laura Markham. Welcome to our office hours. Today is April 24th. I know the days seem to blend together here in the long slog of lockdown in a pandemic, which is not anything I ever expected to hear myself say. And I know that this is a harder time for parents than for most people because I don't know about you, but I'm hearing from people, oh, they're perfecting their sourdough recipe. And if you're able to perfect your sourdough recipe right now with children underfoot and maybe with the help from children, then I am so in awe of you because when my kids were little, that would not have happened. I would have been really struggling to try to get the school assignments done since I wasn't a homeschooler, try to keep my kids occupied and in a good place with each other, try to keep my own work done. And, meanwhile, there's a heavy load of anxiety on everybody because I'm worried about my mother getting sick. I'm reading news reports. I'm wiping everything down before it comes into the house and wiping down the door handles and, washing hands a million times a day. And, that gets old. So I just want to say to every parent, I want to say to you, thank you for what you're doing. It's a gift to your child. It's a gift to yourself. It's a gift to your family, but it's a gift to our whole society because you're keeping other people healthy. And it's easy to feel put upon or victimized by the circumstance. But in fact, it takes heroic measures. But I just want to say thank you for adding to your load as a parent, this extra load that we're all dealing with right now. And I won't waste any more time on preliminaries because I want to be able to answer questions, except to say that we have new people with us today who just joined the Success Path to Peaceful Parenting. So you may not have ever been part of an office hours before. So just writing your questions. Our wonderful Candace is the one who organizes this whole thing and reads the stream of questions and tries to consolidate questions so that I get to as many of them as possible. And so, the sooner you get your question in, the more likely we'll have a chance to answer it. There are always more questions than we can get to, but we'll do our best. And welcome to the Success Path. We're very glad that you're joining us. And Candace, what questions do we have?
We have a lot of welcomes. No one's asked specifically yet anything on the stream. I do have a question I'm just looking for that came in a couple of minutes before we went live. And I apologize. I didn't expect not to be flooded right away.
And you know what? While you're looking that one up, Candace, I noticed one. I was on our Facebook group. I answered a few questions yesterday in the Facebook group. I don't usually have time to go on and answer questions. I could do that 24/7, as you could imagine. But I was on there yesterday reading over and answering a few questions just to see if there was anything that needed to be addressed today. And I did notice one that a number of people had asked and weighed in on, and that is, when your child has a hard time crying, how do you help them cry? Some children cry pretty easily. Some children don't. They're more defended. They're more able to hold it together, and they get angry instead, and it's hard for them to cry. So one answer that was a great answer came from Candace. Candace, you described, I believe, how your daughter had hurt herself at the park. Yes. Yeah. And you really made it safe for her to cry right there at the park. And you said everybody else probably thought you were crazy, but you just were so empathic and, oh my goodness, that must really hurt. And she just wailed. And then I guess I would ask you, Candace, what was it like after that?
You know what? I have to say that I'd had the opportunity to have a coaching session with Sarah Rosensweet, who is one of your coaches. And this has been an issue. I have a very defended daughter. And she had suggested to me to be open about like when the experiences come and take them. And literally hurt herself, and my mind just thought, this is it. This is it. We're going to empty this backpack. And I just went through like all the things. This is so upsetting. You are so upset. And she just cried and wailed, and all the parents looked at me like I was crazy because I wasn't trying to stop it. It was amazing. It was the first experience I'd had where then it was empty and she was clear and good. And I thought, okay, with her for right now, that's going to be my method. I have to take every opportunity because, yeah, we can't get a scheduled meltdown with her.
Yeah. And when you say she was clear and good, what did that actually look like?
Well, that meant like, it looked like she was relieved of a lot of pressures that had nothing to do. It was nothing about the bike. It was just, she had been getting tighter and tighter, like more and more tightly wound. And I could see it that with her, she just holds everything so tight. And she just had finished sobbing and she was like, okay, like I feel better. And I was like, oh, it was just like a big relief. And it really, I felt like it strengthened our relationship. And she's a little bit older now, but I still continue to use those opportunities just because she is a particular kind of personality.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I love that. So I wanted to say that's, of course, the first thing is, sorry, I don't know if you can see me. The first thing is when your child does cry naturally, like they bonk themselves, you know, you're roughhousing with them, you dump them on the couch and they start to cry. Most of us are like, I didn't hurt you. You know, I've jumped on the couch a million times. That couldn't have hurt. You're overreacting. Yes, good. It's an overreaction. Yes, because they're showing you all the old stuff. And so when they overreact like that, that's great. It's your opportunity to make it safe for them to cry so that they actually tap into the tears. And it strengthens the parent-child bond when they do that. We're taught not to let kids cry. And, you know, I don't know if everybody's had that experience, but for me, when I was a new mom, I would do anything to stop my babies from crying. I didn't want them to cry. And I only learned later that actually it's okay if they cry and show me how they feel, as long as I'm not just like putting them down and walking away. If I'm there with them and holding them through it and comforting them, it's a good thing, not a bad thing. And so I think that's the thing, is to make it safe. And then they trust us more with those tears. So they're more likely to do it again. So that's one thing. And another thing I would say is you can strengthen that trust also with laughter. So when a child is tightly wound, that's anxiety. And it's just, you know, I use the word anxiety sort of loosely. It's a form of fear. And when a child is tightly wound, you know, think about, well, if you're a perfectionist, you know, if you're like things to be just so, that's a form of anxiety, right? It's a form of fear. And to the degree that we're that way, we're holding on tight, trying to control things. And kids are holding on tight, trying to control those emotions that bother them. So if we can get them laughing, then it opens up, it sort of clears out some of that fear, because laughter reduces anxiety. And so it makes it more likely that the next time they get angry, if you can make it safe, they will show you the tears and fears under there. And when I say if you can make it safe, what that means is don't try to correct them. When they're angry, they will do things like yell at you. And no parent should be yelled at. I don't want you to get yelled at. But if you can remember that underneath that yelling, there's hurt and there's fear, tears and fears. And you can say, oh my goodness, you're yelling at me. You must be so upset. Tell me more. I'm right here. Instead of joining the fight, right? So now they can stay on their high horse and fight with you. You've completely removed any fight. You've refused to join that fight, that power struggle. Instead, you've made it safe for them to tell you what's really going on. And they still will yell a little bit. They'll be like, of course I'm mad. You never understand. You do this or that. But as you keep making it safe, you keep saying, oh my goodness, did you think that? Oh, I'm so sorry that hurt your feelings, or whatever. And you speak to how upset they are, not how angry, but how upset. They start to show you the upset, which is tears and fears, under the anger. That's why it's good to use sort of an all-purpose word like upset. And as you do that, they go past the anger and they start to tear up. They may not sob yet, but they'll start to tear up. So those are my best tricks for helping children cry. And it is true. I hear from parents all the time that it's hard sometimes to help children feel safe enough, especially if we gave them the message their whole lives that crying wasn't okay, either directly or indirectly by, oh, no, you don't need to cry. It's okay. I've got you. And so it's important that we be patient with the process. We're not trying to make them cry. We're trying to help them feel safe enough that then their natural healing process will take over. And eventually it will. And I do hear from parents that sometimes it takes 3 months, but it does happen eventually. So anyway, that was a question that was on the Facebook group that had a lot of interest. So I thought I would address it directly. Okay,
Thank you,
what
Dr.
else we got?
Well, I have one question that just wonders if you could go in a little further to the idea of scheduled meltdown. We could definitely post some material on the page, but if you want to answer a little bit about what that looks like, just because we're there.
Okay, and that's right, because we're there. So a scheduled meltdown is simply, so when I say meltdown, I actually think of a meltdown as a little bit different than a tantrum, even though they're related. So a tantrum to me is when a kid digs in their heels and they're mad and they, are angry at you. And it could mean sort of any number of things, the way we use it in our society. But a meltdown is more tears. And tantrums usually will move into meltdowns where there's more crying. That's at least the way I use the words, and they're not precise. So a scheduled meltdown means that you have allowed time for that in your schedule. You've opened up the door to having it, to having your child show you those tears. And it doesn't mean you're forcing them to cry or being manipulative. What it means is that you're allowing them to show you the tears when you can give your full attention. You can't give your full attention at the dinner table when you have 2 other kids. You can't give your full attention even at bedtime when you're worried about getting them into bed. But you know that right now, when one kid's napping and the other kid's, having his screen time for the day, and this kid who's been very difficult all day is still being difficult, he needs to cry. So your job is to make it safe for him to cry. And I call that a scheduled meltdown, simply that you're allowing it into the schedule when you have the bandwidth to really be present for your child. Because the only way it's healing for kids is when we are their witness, when we fully show up and allow the emotions and allow them to show you the emotions. Just the way Candace just described that beautiful description in the park when her daughter was wailing and she completely didn't try to make it go away. She said, "Oh, yes, that must have really hurt. I'm right here." And that's what we're trying to do. Now, your child who's having a difficult time won't just suddenly start crying. There has to be a reason for them to start crying. And so usually that your child is having a difficult time will be showing you by being demanding. Kids who have a full backpack, a full emotional backpack, are whiny, they're demanding, they're difficult, sometimes they're defiant. So if your kid is acting like that, it shouldn't be hard to help them move toward tears by setting a limit. So when you set that limit, you don't set some limit you would never have set before. Your whiny, demanding kid is going to say, "I want screen time too. I want a cookie. No, I always have to do this. I don't want to do this," whatever it is you're asking them to do. And you don't really care about the thing, but it is a limit you'd normally have in your house that your kid's giving you a hard time about. You gave them their juice in the blue cup and they want their red cup. And, maybe you would normally go get them the red cup because who cares? But you know that it's really not about the cup. So you say to them, "You really wish you could have the red cup. Your juice is in the blue cup. We're not going to get the red cup right now, sweetheart." And you just set that limit. You can give a reason, like it's out in the car, it's in the dishwasher, or you can just not give a reason. You can just say, "We're not going to get the cup right now that you want. I hear how much you wish you could have that cup." And your kid's like, "No, I need that cup." And you say, "Your day really isn't going the way you wanted. You are having such a hard day, aren't you?" So you're being completely kind, calm, loving, compassionate, empathic, but you're setting some sort of a limit. And the reason you're doing this, there's a beautiful description that Gordon Neufeld gives, who wrote Hold On to Your Kids. He talks a lot about connection. And he talks about how when kids run up against something that is a limit, that, here's the limit, they run up against it and they can't get through it. You're not going to get the cup you want. There's the limit. the child gives up. When they realize it's a firm limit, they give up. And as we give up, we shift from our sympathetic nervous system, which is about fight, flight, or freeze. It's when your kids has a full backpack, it's a threat because they have all these feelings bubbling up to get healed. So when we're in a state of threat, we move into the sympathetic nervous system, and we can't be fully present. We can't be in full loving connection with another person. We can't be cooperative. In fact, when you're in sympathetic nervous system, you're in fight, flight, or freeze. And that's why kids are difficult when they have a full backpack. So as they run up against this wall and they give up, they shift out of the sympathetic nervous system and into the parasympathetic. And one of the things that happens is the body has all these stress hormones from fight, flight, or freeze that now need to be released. So a signal is sent to the lacrimal glands of the eyes to cry. Because when we cry, hormones come out in our tears. We find stress hormones in our tears. We're offloading them now. So when the child comes up against this firm but kind limit, at some point they're going to begin to cry. Now, maybe they don't. Maybe they don't. And as I said, you're not trying to, quote, get them to cry. You're trying to make it safe for them to go through the healing process that they would normally go through. So if they don't cry, step up the safety, step up the connection. Take your whining child in your arms and say, oh, this day is really not going the way you wanted, is it? Oh, sweetheart, come here and let me give you a hug. Sometimes it helps then if they are really not going to cry and they don't just nestle into you and start to and get in touch with their sadness. If they don't do that, you might start to jolly them along and get them laughing. And often what will happen is you say, but I know how we can make this day better. I think we'll have to have an upside down day. And you just turn them upside down and you carry them around upside down. And then you dump them on the couch and they'll be laughing like crazy. And they'll beg you to carry them around upside down some more or shake them around or whatever you're going to do and keep them laughing. And often what will happen is you'll do this like 3 times. And then when you drop them on the couch, they start to cry. And it's because you've created enough safety with the laughter. And also they're not holding on so tight because they've been laughing, that they're able to relax into what's underneath that anger. So you can also create enough safety for your child to show you those tears by laughing.
Thank you so much. There's lots of questions about this coming up. Would you like to answer more about this, or what would you like to do?
You know, I'm not seeing the stream come in. So I can't really judge what's the best thing to do. I don't mind answering more. I think this is a really important, when emotions are high at a time like this, it's an important thing for parents to have answers to. Yeah, I agree. Happy to answer more if that's what you want.
Okay. Thank you, because there are lots of kind of qualifiers. One of our members is asking that every time our kid bumps themselves, should we encourage them to cry?
Okay, so it's so interesting because, of course, that's not what we do in this culture. We say, no, you're okay, right? That's what we usually do. So I think the answer is, if you have a child who is grumpy a lot, whiny a lot, demanding a lot, defiant a lot, difficult, all the signs of the full backpack, controlling. If you have one of those kids who's like, no, do it my way, then yes, I would say every time they bump themselves, you want to be completely opening the door to any tears they can do. Yes. If you have a child who's generally sunny and happy and it's all good and they're not whiny and they're not demanding and they're not difficult, then maybe you don't need to do that so much, right? Because that's not a kid with a full backpack, right? But you also don't tell them they're okay. What you do is you pause and you take a breath. Let's say your 18-month-old just fell down. They're still learning to walk. They often fall down and they bump themselves. You don't want to be rushing in and saying, oh, my poor baby, do you need to cry? Every time your 18-month-old does that, or you're going to create a kid who thinks that every time they fall down, it's an emergency and they need you to get their equilibrium back, right? To regulate. You don't want that. So when your 18-month-old or whatever age falls down, you pause and you're signaling with your calm that it's not an emergency, right? And you're looking at your child and they look at you to check to see if it's an emergency, and you offer a tentative empathy, you say, you fell down. You're just describing what happened. Your 18-month-old can't really talk yet, right? So, but it might be a 3-year-old. You fell down. And your child looks at you and you go, ouch, did it hurt? You're asking, you're not telling. And you're only doing that if they're like helping themselves back up and they didn't hurt at all. It's like, you fell down. You're getting back up. That's all you say. You're not jumping in there to make them cry, right? Again, you never make them cry. You're just allowing anything that's there to come up. So if the kid is looking at you like they're ready to cry, you say, you fell down. Ouch. It looks like maybe you need to cry. And you take them in your arms, and if they want to cry, they cry. That's all. But if your kid doesn't have a full backpack, you're not like, okay, cry some more, cry some more. You're like, but you're not stopping them ever. I mean, we never need to stop a child from crying. We say, you really need to cry. Everybody needs to cry sometimes. And that's it. And then afterwards, when they're better, you say, you fell down and it hurt. Ouch, right? It hurt your knee. And then you got back up and you cried and then you felt better. Yeah. And now you feel fine and you can walk and run and you're fine now, right? So you're helping them see by telling them the story. You're helping them see that A, they're okay, and B, what they can do next time to heal themselves. They don't necessarily need you, although while they're little, they still will want you.
Perfect. Thank you. I think that answers a lot of these questions. I am going to move on.
Great. Okay.
I have a member that is asking about special time and with young teens, and I think we probably don't talk enough about when our kids start to get a little bit older, and I'm sure there's lots of members with kids that are not little.
Yeah, sure. So how to do special time with kids who, as they get older. So when kids are little, it's so easy to get them laughing, and you throw them around and you pull them up upside down, and it's such a treat, because you laugh, they laugh, you're bonding, it's all easy. As they get older, even when they're 7 and 8 and 9, it can be hard to do. And I always talk about having special time be child-led, but what children want to do when they get to be 12 is they want to be on a screen. So I would say hold that day off as long as you can, be judicious about the screen thing. But when you have a kid who's older, it might well be that you're going to sit next to your 14-year-old boy and he's going to show you how he plays his game and aces the levels. And you're going to go, ooh, and ah, the same way you would have done if he was showing you his Legos when he was 4, that's okay to do. I do think you have to follow their interests. So with my daughter, when she got too old to, so first we did art when she didn't want to do pretend play with me anymore. Then we did art. And we could sit and we could do art together and we could chat about things and we could make jokes and laugh together. And it was an easy way for her to talk to me about stuff. So art is a great thing to do. And I find any kind of art really works. So see what your kid likes to do, play or coloring, nice designs together, whatever. If you don't have an art kid and they'll no longer build with you or do pretend play with you and they don't have ideas about what to do, they're probably asking for screens. I would still try not to do screens with them, but you could do things like, let's make something together. I'm not a big fan of cooking when kids are little. I'm a huge fan of cooking when kids are little and every age, but not during special time because you're always there's a lot to manage. If you try to make cookies with 4-year-olds, you're trying to make sure that they didn't put in too much salt. And therefore you're not really, having the tone of special time that you want where they take the lead and they can do whatever they want. But by the time they're 8 or 9, you can make cookies with them or whatever. And they love doing that because, it's not they can handle measuring out the salt without it being a big fiasco. And as they get older, I was just thinking about my daughter. We did baking. We did a lot of music. I would ask her to show me her songs that she loved. And we would listen to them together. And when I say show me at the time, it was just on audio. We weren't watching things on YouTube at that point. So I think you probably want to stay away from YouTube if you can. But if you need to get an 11-year-old laughing and you don't know how, YouTube can be a great way to do it. And so, the laughter is more important, I'd say, than avoiding the screens. So I think follow your child's lead. If you have a kid who likes sports like basketball or roller skating, go do it with them. They'll love it. You'll love it. And you're talking while you're playing, so you're bonding.
Excellent. As a follow-up, we have a member who does have a 10-year-old daughter, and our member is really resistant to doing special time with her and would love some advice. I feel bad to even say this, but she gets me nervous. She reminds me of myself. I hear her screaming and the same things I do to my younger children. And she's looking for a better way to connect and enjoy special time with her 10-year-old daughter.
Okay, so I'm with the screaming, I assume, is at the siblings and is not during special time. It's just screaming that happens that bothers her.
I think her behavior
bothers her. Yeah. So the mom is saying, she reminds me of me and it pushes my buttons, and how can I be close to her?
Yes.
In this instance, even though special time is important, I think there's something else that's even more important. I think you need to find some time to yourself and sit down and get in touch with yourself, the parts of you that your daughter reminds you of, and forgive yourself for those things, whatever they are that bother you, because we all have things that bother us about ourselves, and let go of them. And then get in touch with your daughter. I don't mean actually, I mean they're in the privacy of your own bedroom after your daughter's in bed. Maybe write her a letter about all the things you love about her. Get in touch with how meaningful your relationship with her is to you, how she matters so much to you, how you're scared about who she is and how she'll turn out, and whether you've been a good enough mom. Write about that. Not this isn't a letter you're ever going to give her, but it's a letter that will help you to motivate yourself to be a different kind of mom to her, to be a more forgiving mom to her, to forgive her for the way she's not who you wish she would be, and to forgive yourself for those ways too. Because, every one of us can see things we've done as a parent that are not what we wish we had done, and have had effects. We hear things come out of our child's mouth and we think, oh my goodness, that was me. But we don't have to be perfect to raise good kids. We really don't. And we can let ourselves off the hook and let those past things that we wish we'd done differently motivate us. We miss the mark. Every one of us misses the mark. And we can let that motivate us to do better next time. So I'm actually suggesting light a candle, take a picture of your daughter into your private space and write her a letter and do some reconnecting with how much you love her, with your love for her. I think that will help you. And then special time with her. It sounds like your daughter's resistant to special time because she doesn't enjoy it. So I would just start to find time where you could do something with her that she would like, where you sit down with her while she's doing art or on a screen doing a game or, whatever else she's working on and playing with. Sit down with her and say, I just love being with you. Can I sit with you for a bit? And then just admire her. Pour your love into her like as if she were 3. And as she gets, and also anytime she mentions anything she's interested in, like music or anything, anything that she's interested in, a sports team, go seek that out with her. Be interested when she wants to talk about it. Ask her to show you things about it. Ask to hear it. Basically, follow her lead about anything that seems important in her world that she might be willing to share with you. And I would also say get her laughing in any way you can. And maybe she'll lower those defenses a little bit. And also remember, we're applying the tools from peaceful parenting to life with coronavirus and all the challenges that come up. So remember your 5 tools. Your 5 tools are 1, empathy. empathy is your biggest tool. So no matter what your 12-year-old says to you, you say, you sound like you might be disappointed about that, or that's not what you want to have happened, or wow, that didn't work out like you wanted. You're acknowledging their perspective, right? That's the first one. The second one is special time, which we've just talked about. The third one is welcoming all emotions, which is basically scheduled meltdowns and any other emotions, which we've talked about. Um, the next one is routine, and they're not in any particular order, is routines. Routines are super important because they lower anxiety, and also because um, you can help your children uh, you can build connection into your routines so that your children you find opportunities to connect with them. So routines are super important. And then the final one we've also talked about is roughhousing, but it's really laughter. It's any kind of laughter. So if you can't roughhouse with your 12-year-old to get them laughing, then watch YouTube videos if that's what you need to do, or find other ways to be silly with them and get them laughing. But all of those tools they help your child to self-regulate, they help your child to process emotions, and they help you to connect with your child. Because, of course, connection is 80% of parenting.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions in the vein of schooling at home and anxiety. I'm going to move that way because there's a couple. We have a member, my child doesn't want to talk with friends from school during the shutdown. She will participate in online learning in class, but doesn't want to talk to peers. Do I just stop asking?
I think that the asking, well, we don't know why the child doesn't want to, first of all, right? And the asking will be perceived as pressure. If it's perceived as an opportunity that the parent doesn't care whether the child does it, then there's no reason not to ask. It's like, okay, what are you up to today? Would connection to other kids help you as one of 5 things, right? When are we able to go outside? Some places in the world, kids still can't go outside at all, right? We're in the United States, we can still take kids to the park in most places, but I know there are places where parents in our membership still can't take kids outside. But like when you're talking to the kids, you can say, what do you want to do today? We need to do something to move our bodies. We need to do something to get outside if we can. We need to do something to laugh. We need to do something to connect with our inner wisdom and our deeper source. Some people pray, some people meditate, some people sing, some people do art, whatever helps you process emotion. I mean, this helps you process emotion, right? Is the other thing it does. So you say this to a child, and then you say, and, did you want to connect with any of your friends? And if your child's like, nah, that's it. You shrug and that's it. But if your child's like, Mom, no, I told you I don't want to, then you've pushed a button somehow. There's some live wire there. And you say, okay, I will stop asking. It sounds like this is pretty loaded for you. You've told me several times, it sounds like, and I haven't listened. I guess I really didn't hear you. You know me, I always want to talk to my friends, so I assumed you did. And I guess you felt pushed. Is that what happened? And your kid's like, yeah, you were pushing me. And you say, wow, I didn't even mean to. I was just trying to set up something that would be nice for you. And I apologize that you felt pushed. I didn't mean to be pushing you. It sounds like those talks are not really rewarding for you. Now, your child might say, no, they aren't, and that's that. Or your child might say, how could they be rewarding? People are so mean to each other. And then something's happened. So I'm thinking of one boy who I talked to his parents this week, and he was doing these. He was on the iPad with the other boys in his class. He was 7, and he doesn't have a lot of social skills. This boy, and he wanted desperately to be part of the group, and the other boys were being mean to him, repeatedly mean to him. And so when his parents realized this, and we talked about it, they stopped his hanging out with the other boys, and they've set up play dates that are more supervised with kids that are not going to be mean to him. But we don't, it's sort of a free for all. Unless you're in the room, you don't know what's really going on in these things. And especially if there's more than one other child. And so I would just say everybody has a lot of stress and tension right now. And it's um, it's possible for there to be mean things said that your child doesn't know how to handle and need your help with. So if you see that this is a loaded issue, it's a great idea to just sort of try to open the door to understand why your child's reacting so badly to it.
Okay, thank you. Kind of related, connection and school. This is a member that is a parent and is really finding it stressful with required teaching at home in conjunction with everything else. I'd love to opt out. How do I manage the balance of school with parents as pseudo teachers and also with connections as loving parents? I think a lot of us can relate to that stress right now. Just if you have something to say about that.
Yes, I think everyone, I would just say every parent I know who is trying to do school assignments at home can relate to this. So the stories I hear from parents are they get into terrible power struggles with their children, or they feel like I'm thinking of one 14-year-old who, is behind his door doing, supposedly he's on his computer, but what he's really doing is chatting with his friends the whole time and playing Fortnite. And his parents can't even really supervise it because they say, did you do your math? And he says, yeah, I submitted it already. See, I pressed the, I've got the little thing here saying I submitted it. So they don't know whether he did his math. So I would say, first of all, let's pull the camera back from the specifics of how to manage it. And let's just ask the question, do we need to do it at all? Do we even need to be making our children? And usually it's, I don't know how, when I send out my emails, I don't know how I would do a cross out, like in MailChimp where I write my emails. So I send out my newsletters and I find myself whenever I talk about this issue, I want to write making our children and then cross it out and write helping our children. And I always end up putting helping in, but it's making them, right? That's what it is. We're making them do this stuff. So the first question is, do we need to make them? And I would say, it's not worth eroding your relationship with your child. That's what I would say. It's not worth eroding your relationship with your child. And if you can't, to the degree that your child is enjoying the school stuff, great. It keeps their learning up to some degree, not a huge degree, but to some degree. And it, makes them feel like they're doing what their teacher is asking them to do and all that. And that's great. But to the degree your child is resistant, I would ask the teacher, my kid's having a really hard time with this much work and I'm working. You can just tell them, I have my hands full. They don't know if you still have a job that you're trying to work at home, but lots of people are. I'm working. I can't supervise my child all the time. I can't get them to do more. Can we pare this down so that the kids who want to do extra credit can do it, but my kid's not going to do the extra credit? What is the minimum my child can do? And what are they going to do if your child does the minimum or even less than the minimum? Fail your child? I don't think so. I think everybody's going to get a pass. There are families who do not have an iPad or a laptop or a computer for kids to work on. And even if they do, they don't have one for every child to work on. I'm talking to families where at 8:30 in the morning, 2 or 3 different kids have to get on there at 8:30 in the morning to do circle time or whatever when the class starts. And they don't have 3 devices because mom and dad are working. So I think there's no way our society is going to be able to fail these children, your child, because you don't do the work. So I would say, what's your most important job right now? It's a pandemic, right? Your most important job is to keep your child safe and the rest of your family safe and healthy. That's the most important job. What's your second most important job? I would say it's to help you and your rest of your family be in a good place emotionally. That means your child has to feel safe, right? And not be a nervous wreck. Right now, your child is still a child. That means every day they're laying down neural pathways. If they're laying down neural pathways for months in a pandemic, there's a risk factor there. The risk factor is isolation from friends and school and regular life, isolation from being outside in nature or being able to just go to the playground to let off steam. Isolation is only part of it, though. More important is what's the tone at home? We know child abuse is up. We know parents are yelling more. Do those children feel safe? No. If someone's hitting you, you don't feel safe, obviously. But what about just yelling? What if parents are at their wits' end? And so many parents are right now and are yelling at their kids. Do those kids feel safe? No. So we have a responsibility to our children's emotional development to help them feel safe. And that means everything draws from that. That means we try to walk away from power struggles. We try to keep things calm between us. We try to keep our own equilibrium so we can be emotionally generous. We try to keep our own anxiety level down. That means you don't follow, social media about the pandemic, for instance, to keep your own anxiety level down. You're very measured about it, right? About news consumption. And you use practices that will keep you in a better place, feeling more safe. So if you're doing all of that and you're calmer, you still have the problem of, are you getting to power struggles with your children about their assignments? And so the more you can make it fun, the more you can make it easy, the more you can make it, well, teacher, we didn't do this, but we did this instead. He drew a picture about it instead of writing a paragraph, because he was able to do that picture while you were doing your conference call, or whatever. I think that's what we have to do. You don't need perfection right now. And we're going to have a larger societal answer to the school problem, right? They're not going to flunk all the kids who missed this last quarter here, this last semester. They're going to have to figure, and we may have it in the fall, right? We're in here for the long haul. So we don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows. But there are more important things to think about now. Your child's emotional development will be much more important in their eventual success in school than what you do with them in terms of homework over the next month.
Thank you. I am again. I'm good. I've got two eating questions for you. I'm going to start with my 4-year-old daughter. Has always been a fussy eater. When I present something new, she cries and cries. Our policy is that she can choose if she tries or not. In theory, there's no reason for the crying. I feel like it's the pandemic. I pick her up when she's crying and try to soothe her. When she's calmer, we return to the table, and she sometimes sits on my legs and tries the food. Sometimes I help her eating. Sorry, it's very long. My husband keeps saying that she does this because she knows she will get the benefit of me helping her eat and sitting on my legs. We also have a rule that we're not allowed to leave the table unless we're done eating, and he thinks allowing her to come back after crying is breaking the rules. Am I creating a problem here? Please advise me.
Okay, so I think the first problem is getting to power struggles with kids about food. We shouldn't be getting to power struggles with kids about food. It turns out that taste buds are formed, might not be the word, but the
I know this
range that your taste buds like is highly influenced when you're a baby. There's a window like from 7 months to 13 months or something, where the range of foods you like is, not cemented in, but is certainly opened up. So kids who eat Brussels sprouts when they're a year old, they might take that Brussels sprout and go, and they might even spit it out. That doesn't mean they don't like it. It means it tastes bitter. And then you give them a Brussels sprout again, and the same thing happens 3 times in a row. But each time they're liking the Brussels sprout a little bit more and swallowing a little bit more of it. And when they're older, they're going to have more of a taste for Brussels sprouts, it turns out. So this is an important thing to know, that when they're babies, this happens. And then we know what happens, which is to keep toddlers from poisoning themselves back many generations ago, when they might pick something off a bush and eat it that wasn't okay for them to eat and would kill them. Toddlers stop eating anything that doesn't feel super familiar to them, and they basically have a very limited range of things that they eat. And then we spend their whole childhoods trying to reintroduce things. The good news is that by the time they're in middle school, usually, the taste buds are more mature. The taste buds actually mature again out of the toddler years steadily, but especially, middle school and high school. And kids start to love Thai food or whatever else. It might be something they wouldn't have liked when they were 6 and 4 and 2. So we know that we know. And we also know that if you get into power struggles with your child about food, your child will have control issues about food, because we learn both sides of every relationship, and we can play both sides of every relationship. And your child will relate to herself the way you relate to her. So if you're making her eat things or withholding things or getting into power struggles about food, your child will have internal struggles about food. And that's not something you want. So the general rule of thumb is you make sure your child has a range of healthy choices at every meal, and that over the course of a day or several days, your kid has the opportunity to eat different things. So, you might find they eat a lot of sweet potatoes one day, and the next day they eat a lot of chicken. And then the next day, they're willing to eat some green things, but they may not eat any protein on the sweet potato day and, or any greens on the chicken day. And that's actually a way that a lot of kids eat. So you also don't need to make sure that every meal they consume is a balanced meal. What you want to make sure is that you're serving things that provide a balanced diet over a couple of days, that give them lots of opportunities to try new things and to eat something that's a healthy, balanced diet. So you do not have to cook special meals for your kid, but if there's some, and it's fine to introduce new foods. It's great to introduce new foods. And when you have a new food, you enjoy it. One of the most important ways to help kids like food is for you to enjoy it and talk about how delicious it is. So the research studies that have been done about kids in France who supposedly eat anything, everything, and they don't really, but a lot of them, I mean, they still like French fries better than anything else, but they eat a lot more range of foods than we do. Turns out so do their parents, and their parents enjoy those things. The French parents are not sitting there saying, oh, this is a good thing to eat because it's good for you to eat these carrots. No, the French parents are saying, oh, this carrot's delicious. Oh, I love these carrots the way they're prepared. Did you try these, sweetheart? They're saying to their husband or whatever. And the kids are like, oh, I want to try a carrot too, right? So there are all kinds of ways to help kids want to try it. And you can have a rule in your house that kids need to have one bite of something, if that's the rule you want to have. I couldn't quite tell from what you said, Candace, whether that's the rule, that she wanted one bite and the child cries about that. But I will say that any 4-year-old who's routinely dissolving into tears when a new food is introduced is probably being forced to try the new food and maybe being forced to eat more of it than they actually want to eat. So that sounds like a power struggle to me. So I think that's an issue. I think we all want our kids to have a range of things that they eat. I think it's fine to have one bite. They have to try one bite is fine if that's what you want to do. But I hope that there's not a power struggle going on where the child is being forced to do that. And I would say about her specific questions, holding her child on her lap, she's helping her. Her child is borrowing the mom's ability to self-regulate now at that point. The child knows, okay, my parents are going to make me take a bite of this thing that I don't want. It's a new thing I've never seen. I'm terrified. Because that's a natural thing. Children are terrified of new foods for a reason. It could kill them, right? The kids who just willy-nilly ate the things they weren't scared of, some of them died, right? So they didn't pass their genes on to us. The kids who were scared of eating new things, they passed their genes on to us. They lived at least through that. And those are our ancestors, so we come by it honestly. So this kid is scared. This 4-year-old's terrified of this new food. And she's terrified of it. So what will help her to do what she knows her mom and dad really want her to do and take a bite of this? What will help her to do that? Mom. Getting on mom's lap. Mom calmed her down. Now she's going to sit on mom's lap. She's going to hold mom's leg. She's going to open her mouth and she's going to take that bite of something. This is how she's doing this hard thing you're asking of her. You're giving her extra support. This is always what we need to do. Whenever we have an expectation of our children that is more than they can handle just easily at that moment, we have a choice. We can pull out a stick or we can give them more support. So a stick would be a threat, but that's not very helpful. It doesn't actually help the child rise to the occasion. It creates defiance. It creates, well, you know about sticks and threats. But if you give them more support, your child is able to meet your expectations. So this mom is doing a great job of helping her daughter meet her expectations. Now, the business of leaving the table and coming back, would you rather she just didn't come back and didn't try the food? I don't get it. Like, of course. I don't know what the rule is exactly, but I would loosen that rule up to allow the child to do it. It's like, so I'm not quite sure what the rule is, but I would say you could probably play with that rule so you're not breaking the rule constantly.
Okay, so about helping like scaffolding to meet expectations. I noticed there's just a few add-ups. I'm aware of that. We always offer a range of options. I'm more concerned about her reaction, and I feel like you definitely answered that. Now I have a similar-ish question.
And I see she's not being forced. I see she's not being forced. Thank you. Sorry, for anyone listening, as I get these questions, I'm doing my best to answer for the person asking, but also for everybody else listening. So I just wanted to make sure, because I heard the child was crying. I wasn't sure if she was, what exactly was going on. So you're offering her the opportunity and you're giving her support so she can take that opportunity to try the new food. It sounds to me like you're doing great.
Thank you. I have a member. My 10-year-old daughter doesn't want to feed herself quite often. We have parents have been feeding her many times ever since her brother was born, who is now 6. It seems to be sibling rivalry. Can you please give us advice on how to deal with this? So a 10-year-old daughter who wants to be fed.
Okay, so 10-year-olds won't starve themselves. So I would say wean her away from this by giving her support. I would first of all get her laughing about being fed. Beg her to feed you, but not necessarily at the table. Like play with her, play a game separate from the dinner table, where or over lunch, where it's just the two of you, or something that you beg her to feed you, and you just be totally silly. You can't feed yourself. You're going to starve if you don't get some food, and please, please, please feed me, and get her laughing at you, right? And it will lower the anxiety about it a little. And then give her a hug and say, sweetheart, you wish I would always feed you, don't you? And she says, yeah, I need you to always feed me. And you say, I know, you really wish I would always feed you because you love to be my little baby. When we're in special time, we can always do this. I will always pretend to feed you and have you be my little baby as much as you want, right? I'm seeing that I'm a little blurry for people.
And volume apparently.
Volume also, huh? Okay. So I think I'm going to get closer to the mic. I have this mic here, so I'm going to get closer to my mic. I'm also going to turn off my cell phone because that's the only thing that's drawing on the signal. And I don't know what else to say. I hope this is better. But the clarity issue is a signal issue. I don't know what to say. So, hopefully you'll be able to hear my voice well, even if you can't see my picture. I'm sorry. So I am going to shout into my mic, and hopefully that will actually help. Okay, so there, good. I'm glad it's fine for some people. Okay, I want to go back to the 10-year-old. So you say to the 10-year-old, you wish I would always feed you because you want to be my baby. I love you as my baby. You are my 10-year-old darling baby. I love you so much. I love to feed you. And in special time, I can feed you as much as we want. And you pretend, it's pretend, but you're pretending to feed your child in special time. She can have a bottle even if she wants one. And you get her laughing about the whole feeding issue. And then you say to her, I know you wish I would always feed you, but you know what? It's important that you practice feeding yourself. So at the dinner table, you're going to need to feed yourself from now on. And you could do it meal by meal if you want. You can say, breakfast and lunch, I can still feed you, but not dinner or whatever. I mean, I don't know how much this is going on. So I would just say, you want to basically make the rule that I'm not going to be feeding you at dinner, sweetheart, but I can pretend to feed you as much as you want. And she will probably have a very hard time. And she'll probably cry, and you can be prepared for a few dinner. You're going to have a clear line, like we never do it at dinner. And she's going to probably cry at dinner, and she'll pick at her food, and she won't actually eat anything. And then she's going to beg you for food later. And you can say, you can have a bedtime snack, sweetie. I'll just heat up your food from before. Save her plate, cover it up, stick it in the microwave. You can have a bedtime snack and do not feed her. Let her feed herself. 10-year-olds do not starve themselves. And she will cry. And what she's really crying about is that you're withholding nurturance that she, as your baby, wants, right? She wants to be the baby. Her brother got the nurturance. He got fed. She wants to be fed too, and she wants to be treated as a baby. So you give that to her in fantasy at special time. But it doesn't mean you have to give it to her every meal or any dinner time. And you gradually can, once dinner's fine, 3 weeks later, you can also say, we're not going to do it at breakfast or whatever.
Okay. I have a question from a member. My daughter is 6 and tells me consistently that I don't pay enough attention to her because she has a 2-year-old brother and he gets all the attention. He's still breastfeeding and nurses a lot. And now that I'm home with the kids all day, what can I do to help her?
Yeah, I would find time that is just her time. First of all, special time every single day. So if the 2-year-old naps, that's an easy time. but also anytime the 2-year-old is occupied, if you can set the 2-year-old up on your kitchen floor with a pot of bubbling of like water with bubbles in it and things to pour with, I'm sure the 2-year-old will make a total mess, but he can probably be occupied for 20 minutes that way. And you can tell her that you're going to do this in advance, your 6-year-old, and say, pick something that we can do together, just the two of us. So it's like special time, extra special time, but she gets that extra time so that she really feels like there's time when you're really pouring your love into her. And 2-year-olds still love to nurse, but that doesn't mean he needs to nurse constantly either. So you can also set some parameters around nursing that, of course, he always nurses, when he wakes up or before his nap time. But that doesn't mean that when he's bored or when he sees you with the 6-year-old, he comes over and demands to nurse. And you can say, I know you wish you could nurse. We're going to nurse a little bit later. Come sit with us and you can play with this. And no, he wants to nurse. You can actually put some restrictions around that by saying, I know you wish you could nurse. We'll nurse a little later. Now, the truth is, as you begin to do that, he'll cry and you'll have to take care of him. So it will interrupt your time with her. But once he gets used to the idea that we nurse in the morning, we nurse before nap, we nurse after nap, we nurse before bedtime 4 times a day, but we don't nurse all afternoon long just because you're bored, right? Then I think usually what you find is he doesn't ask all day long. And 2-year-olds don't need to nurse all day long, is my opinion. I think they often ask to nurse just because they want some connection. And so when they come and ask to nurse, you can provide them with a connection without necessarily nursing them at the time. I think, it is hard for an older child to see the little one nursing all the time and having this unique experience with us that they don't get. So I think making sure that you find opportunities to connect with her, even if it's not special time, over and above that, where you just go over to her and say, I just noticed how you were playing with your whatever. I saw how you were putting those pieces together and you were really focusing on it. I love to watch you work like that. You're just telling her you love to watch what she does because she's of value to you. And that goes a long way for kids.
Thank you. We're getting close to time. I have a couple of small questions, I think. I have, actually, I think this is an important one, and this is maybe bigger, and it's something we've talked about. This is a new member. My 8-year-old has a lot of health-related anxiety that he never had before COVID. Oh, actually, it's so he never had before, and it's starting to come up every night at dinner and bedtime. How can I best help him? I apologize. We have not answered this question
So
before.
hard. Yeah. So I would say, first of all, a lot of kids have this. And I actually recorded a few weeks ago an hour-long audio about helping kids with their anxiety in general, but specifically for COVID-19 also. So I think that they can still access that on the membership page. All the COVID-19 resources since we started are there. So usually when you join, you're going to be with us for a year. So you will come back around. So the special time month that we already did, or the self-regulation month that we already did, no worries. You'll get all those materials when we come back around at the end of your year. You'll get those. But COVID-19, we are doing for a long time. So if you've just come on, all the resources that we did before you joined the membership you have access to. And so there are a couple of meditations. There's the audio I'm speaking of about anxiety. There's a printable. There's various things. Oh, you don't have the printable yet. You're about to get it. You're going to get it next week, the printable. But you do have a nice printable that one of our members made that I sent out with the newsletter, the notice of this Facebook hours. So back to anxiety. I would say definitely listen to that. That will help a lot. I would say you want to acknowledge your child's feelings. If your child feels like they can talk to you about them, that will go a long way toward diffusing their anxiety. But also notice the things your child is saying about what they're anxious about that are not true, like everybody's dying, or it would be easy to die of this. In fact, it's not easy to die of this if you're a kid. And 80% of the people who have symptoms have very mild symptoms, or I say have mild symptoms. And many people are asymptomatic. They're not even in that 80%. So And the people who are in the 20%, those are the people we have to be extra mindful of not infecting, right? But most of them are not children. So your child does need facts from you so that they feel better. But just giving them facts and trying to talk them out of their anxiety won't work. You have to listen to the anxiety, and you have to not be anxious yourself. I'll say I've been struck by how many people seem to have the news on around their children or talk about COVID-19 in front of their children. I think it's super important not to do that if you have a child, not to do it with any child, honestly. And if you have a child who tends toward anxiety, definitely not to do it. And I would teach that child ways to manage their anxiety. I would use a guided meditation. I would sit with them and do the guided meditation with them. I would make sure every day that they get a chance to move around, breathing. I'm thinking of breathing, and children, to offload anxiety, need to move. Very important. So listen to that hour that I created, and hopefully that will help. And I won't. I know we have other questions, and we're running out of time, so I won't go into more detail because it's covered there. But if you feel like you still have questions, by all means, come back to the group and pose your questions in the group.
Thank you. Would you like to do another question?
We can do a little bit more. Sure. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, sure.
So it seems like there's a couple of questions that are kind of talking towards self-esteem. I'm just going to, pardon me, and that changed. Okay. So I have the most recent question. I apologize. My feed has switched. So I'm going to start with the most recent question, which is an intelligent, insecure 10-year-old daughter. Our member asks, how do I make her like my jolly and 6-year-old, lively, jolly 6-year-old? But I think it's mostly about self-esteem and insecurity. And I do have another question about 2 questions that refer to children that are feeling insecure, and how do you boost their security feelings, I guess. Self-confidence.
So I won't address that question. I'm going to wait till we get to those 2 questions. And I'm just going to say about this one, you're not going to make your 10-year-old like your 6-year-old. Every human being is different. We aren't going to make her like somebody else. What we're going to do is help her, your 10-year-old, to be the best version of herself. And we know she's intelligent. It's just that she's insecure. And so we want to help her with that insecurity. And now, I don't know if you want to give me the specifics about those other kids, but I would say love the jolly 6-year-old for being just like he is, lively and jolly, and love the 10-year-old for being who she is. And you don't need to make her into somebody else, but it's not too late. There's definitely time to do that. And it's about her insecurity that we want to address. So Candace, do you want to give me any more specifics about the other kids' insecurity, or should I talk about that in general?
I think you should talk about it in general. For some reason, I cannot access it on our feed. Please and thank you.
Okay,
and I apologize for your question.
No worries. Okay, no worries. So kids are insecure. What is insecurity? It's feeling like we're not good enough, right? We're not enough. And the human mind is set up to look for lack. It's set up to look for pitfalls. It's set up with a negativity bias because we need to make sure that we address things that might be wrong so we can survive, right? Addressing things that are right by enjoying them, that's not part of the survival instinct. So the human mind is set up to look for things that are wrong. It's the negativity bias to keep us alive. So we're always scanning for what's bad and wrong and lacking. Even though if we instead focused on the positive, we'd be so much happier. So kids who feel insecure are focusing on what's lacking in them, what's not good enough in them. And what we want to do is we want them to know that they are more than enough, exactly as they are. And they will learn that from us reassuring them, but they'll also learn it by having the experience of actually addressing things in their life. It's called efficacy, the ability to take action, to get what they want in the world, to be competent. So you can tell a kid, oh, you're great, you're wonderful, but they're not going to believe you unless they feel like, yeah, when I sit down to take a spelling test, I can study in a way that lets me do well on that spelling test. So they need to have a sense of competence in the world, or they won't feel good about themselves. So we want to address any ongoing stimuli in their lives that make them feel lesser than. If they have a learning disability, if they somehow feel less because their brother gets all the attention, maybe he's, cuter and jollier and livelier or something, and they don't feel like they're good enough. And I know no parent would ever intentionally communicate that, but kids are always looking at their siblings and feeling like they don't measure up. Every kid, looks at their siblings and they find, the older child is looking at the younger one and saying, well, the younger one's always on mom's lap. The younger child looks at the older child and says, oh, the older child can do all these things I don't know how to do. They're so much smarter than I am. The parents, are always making a big deal out of the new things they learn to do. The older child, they must love the older child more, right? So kids are always looking at that. So it's our job to make sure that each child has unconditional love, that we love them exactly as they are, even if we secretly wish that our child would be a little bit less introverted or extroverted or whatever they are that we're not, that we find more difficult to deal with. That's okay. We can still learn to appreciate. It's the letter I talked about at the beginning of this. We can still learn to appreciate each child for who they are. And, it's like might have a child on the spectrum. You might have a child with special needs. You can appreciate what's good about that, what's special, what's endearing, what's darling about that child. And you can love them just as they are. And if you can do that and also give them opportunities to be competent, your child will increase in self-esteem. And there is an article on the AHA Parenting website about self-esteem and helping your child have build good self-esteem. So I also will make sure we get the link to that posted on the membership page so people can read it. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Laura.
Yes. And we can keep going a little bit longer. I want to be respectful of people's time, but I know that there are more questions that we'd like to answer. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Self-esteem. I do have a member that wonders if you can comment. I was wondering if you are familiar with PCIT, Parent-Child Interaction Therapy, and if you could comment on how that aligns or does not align with what you teach. Thank you.
Okay. So I don't want to get PCIT confused with something else, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not here. I would say that my understanding of PCIT is they're big on special time, which is great. They actually, in PCIT therapy, they have the parent learn to sit with the child and not direct them and just pour their love into them, just unconditionally love and accept the child. So that part of PCIT is great. The part of PCIT I have a hard time with, though, is that they do a version of timeouts. And I don't think that helps the child. There's no reason to isolate your child, to tell your child, and again, I'm going to quote Gordon Neufeld, who I quoted earlier. He says a timeout is telling the child, you don't have the right to exist in my presence. And I would say my take on a timeout is you're basically threatening the child. You're saying, I could, if I wanted to, I could just put you off or you would have no interaction with me because I'm that powerful. So you better behave. That's what you're essentially telling them when you put them on the naughty step. So if PCIT is recommending timeouts, PCIT is for kids who are having struggles, behavior struggles. And, it's super hard if you have a kid who has behavior struggles, who's aggressive. It can be super hard to know what to do when they're being aggressive. And I would say aggression is an expression of a child not feeling heard. And if you can help a child feel heard before they move to aggression, often they won't move to the aggression. Remember that people are aggressive when they have tears and fears that they're trying to keep down, right? That's when people lash out. So the more your child can cry, the less aggressive they will be. I've had parents come to me and I work with them and help them to get their child crying, to make it safe for their child to cry, and their child stops hitting. In general, I would say any kind of isolation and threats for kids is not a good idea. So to the degree that PCIT uses that, I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay. Thank you.
I see someone asking about guided meditations. I noticed the guided meditations, and I just wanted to say, yes, absolutely. Put it in your own language. And I only have one tip for you about this. I believe that the voice is resonates with our um, our emotions at the time. I think we're always radiating. Every one of us is radiating at all times. So right now, I hope you're feeling the love in my heart that I'm beaming out to you as you're watching this. And when you're done watching this and you go interact with your children, I'm hoping that you're in a place of well-being where that love and emotional generosity you're feeling will be beaming to your children. And sometimes we have a hard day. Sometimes we wake up in a bad mood. Sometimes it's hard to get ourselves into a better place, and we just need to cry or work through that. It's okay to have those feelings, and they will beam out too. You know, if you're in that place, your sadness will be felt by the people around you, for instance. So that's why we want to take care of our own feelings before we try to intervene to be there for our child. So I would just advise the mom who wants to make the guided meditations to to help her do some meditation first, to listen yourself, get yourself in a good place where you're feeling like what you're radiating is love and compassion. And then record the meditation for your children to listen to, and you will find it resonates with all of the love that you put into it.
Okay, keep moving, keep moving.
I see. Oh, because we're over time. This is it's okay. This is what happens when we go over time, right? We go over time and everybody comes in. At least they all have pants on. Sometimes the kids don't have pants on, right? So
Pardon me.
okay,
I
no problem. Candace, I'm going to jump in here.
I feel I have one question that we have a new member, and this is something that we have. I apologize.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, keep going.
No worries. No worries.
Oh, no.
So before you, okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
That's okay. I've lost it. It keeps moving.
I have a new member.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
We have a member, and she is a single parent with a number of children. And I'm sorry, I've lost your question. I have read it a number of times, and I feel like we should get to it. She's just feeling that she's stuck in fight with just everything, just trying to remain consistent. Knows her kids know they can walk all over her because she's just under so much pressure being a solo parent during this period of time.
Okay, so I'm going to say this is triage time. This is like you just walked into the ER, right? And we're doing triage here. So the first thing we're going to say is to this mom, you need a hug. Get somebody, even one of your kids, to give you a big hug. That's the first thing, and give yourself a big hug. And the second is forgive yourself that you're just barely holding it together, because that's okay. That's the state we're in at this moment, right? That it's hard. And forgive yourself for all the ways you're not perfect at this moment. And what we're doing here is we're loving everybody, ourselves included, right? We're loving our children. We're loving ourselves through this. It's a hard moment. And don't make yourself wrong or bad. You're allowed to not be, some paragon of virtue here. You're allowed to be a single mom trying to hold it together with a bunch of kids. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say is we're gonna start with like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The most important need is physical. Are your children, do they have a roof over their heads? Are they being kept healthy, basically? Are they safe from the virus? Are they being, mostly not hitting each other, right? We want to keep them from hitting each other. Are they being fed? And you know what? It would be great if you're giving them a lot of vegetables. If you're not, who cares? Feed them macaroni and cheese if that's what you have to do. It's not going to kill them to have macaroni and cheese every day for a week if that's what they have to have. My point is, make it easy on yourself. Would we love them to have some vitamin A to keep their immune system functioning better? Sure. Give them some carrots out of the bag, but I guess I'm just saying, ratchet down your expectations. You do not need to have high expectations right now. Your job is to restore a sense of well-being to yourself, right? That's it. And there are some habits that will help you restore a sense of well-being. And I've addressed this in my blog posts over the last 2 months during the COVID-19 pandemic. I've said, here are the things that are going to help you, but just really quickly off the top of my head, get enough sleep. Don't go online. Don't go on social media. Make sure you're eating well, right? And that you are giving yourself time every day to offload a buildup of feelings. We all have a buildup of negative feelings. I say negative. We all have a buildup of grief. Either people we love have died, or people we love could die, or we see the headlines and other people have died. There's a lot of grief, and even if none of that's true for you, there's the grief of the life we had is gone. We may never get that life back like we had it. And we're waiting for the other shoe to drop economically. We've all got grief right now, all of us. We've got uncertainty. Nobody likes feeling uncertain. And we have fear and anxiety. And so every one of us needs ways to process that. And the best way to process it is to open up the door to it and just say, I am here. I'm willing to feel this. And you can journal, you can listen to some sad music and let yourself cry. You can call a friend where you would feel nurtured. I think it's very important to remember to nurture yourself. One of the big really the big contribution of mindful self-compassion, if you've ever heard of that, is mindfulness is great, but mindfulness without compassion is scary. It can re-traumatize you if you're just allowing stuff in but not holding yourself with love. So mindful self-compassion is always holding yourself in love when you allow emotions up. And there's a lot of resources. My workbook is a resource. Linda Graham, who wrote a book called Resilience, has a lot of online resources that are very beautiful. In fact, I can post the one with her meditations on the membership page. She's a friend of mine. She's someone I say friend. She's a colleague who I have a relationship of some sort with, and I adore her. I think she's amazing. And so she's somebody I would recommend. I just think that all of the practices you can do for yourself that could help you, great, do them. And you can only do so many because you have kids to watch. So that's true too. So I would just say lower your expectations and take really good care of yourself.
Thank you. I'm handing it over to you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Great. I thank you, Candace. And I love that your kids went through the back. I just love it because I don't have little kids. As I said to Candace when we were hopping on today, I said, I'm great. I am okay because I don't have little kids running around right now and I'm able to focus on my work, but I can't even imagine having my kids when they were little at this moment. It's just my hat off to everybody who's doing that. I want to address really quickly one of the questions that just came in about Stephen Porges. So Stephen Porges has done a lot of research on the nervous system and how we can help ourselves to feel safe so that we can process the emotions that we're feeling, and also how to notice that our lack of safety is what causes us to what causes children to act out, what causes adults to act out. We don't feel safe often, and so we act out. And I think we forget that sometimes with our kids. So Stephen Porges has a safe and sound protocol. Yes, I'm a big fan of Stephen Porges. I'm also I like and I'm blanking. There's a wonderful woman who wrote a book, who worked with him and wrote a book. There's two of them. Who've written books, one about kids, and she's great. And again, I can post this on the website because I'm on our membership page because I'm blanking on her name. I'm almost there, but I'll post that. But it's a good book about kids who are kids with behavior problems, and it's from the Stephen Porges perspective. So that's really great. So I like Porges's Safe and Sound protocol. Okay, so I would just say to you who are trying your best to get through this pandemic, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to show up and take care of your kids, and that's heroic enough. And try to love them and love yourself through this, and ask for help when you need it. this group that Candace is leading is so helpful, and people are there for each other to help. When you need support, please post there. And I am sending you, I'm sending you blessings for health, and I'm sending you a big hug. And thank you for joining us today, if you were here in person, and if you are watching later. And we are doing these office hours now every couple of weeks during coronavirus, so that you get a chance to ask your question. So if a question comes up for you that doesn't get answered on the group, please just jot it down and then ask me in the next office hours. So take care of yourself and take care of your kids. Bye-bye. Thanks for coming.